Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here, and this is my next Tmnt 2012 episode review. This is going to be my review for the series finale, the three-parter Raphael Mutant Wasteland. And yeah, let's just get straight into this. So, obviously I think the first thing to say is just that it really felt like this was Nickelodeon just kind of getting the show out of the way. It feels like they just don't care about the remaining like 7 episodes or whatever it is. Obviously, the descriptions for them don't make them seem like they're particularly important. This very clearly is the production final 3 episodes. They just aired them now for whatever reason. No idea what Nickelodeon's intent was behind the scheduling of these last couple of episodes, but it's just disappointing to see that even though like I think most people would acknowledge the show kind of has been a little bit off the rails since like the end of season 2. At some point I think everyone has had that kind of perspective on things. It's done some things right, but it's made a lot of mistakes along the way. But still, to see it treated like this right at the end is very disappointing to see. As for the quality of these 3 episodes, I'm just going to come out and say I thought it was a pretty bad like ending to the show overall. Because I felt like it just it went too far down the road of being like apocalyptic crazy future. I kind of just forgot that like there are other characters. Like ending it, I get maybe having an arc set in the future, but using this as the way to end the series just for me was just not good. I didn't feel any sort of connection to kind of what happened at the end. It all felt a tad predictable once the episode properly got going, and it's just like, okay, here's Raph, and then here's Robot Donnie, then they meet up with Mikey, and then of course the villain at the end is revealed to be Leo. That's the way it goes. Everyone's still alive, and it's just that they all had these different things happen to them based on this big event that happened. But the utter lack of explanation for anything, and I think it, once again, series' biggest problem, over-reliance on action that means nothing. The amount of car chase scenes that just were completely indistinct from each other in this episode I thought was way over the top. There should have been like 5 or 6 moments where they just stopped and informed us about information in this episode. This was one of those ones where you should have just done proper flashbacks. None of this comic stuff anymore. Like, this is an important flashback that you have to tell about this event that changes everything. So I thought that was very disappointing with how they approached doing that, because they never gave any explanation for what this mutagen bomb is, where it came from. It's just, it happened and it tore everything apart. There was no sense of closure for any of the key relationships, like, did Leo and Karai get together? What about Mona Lisa? She was just forgotten about. Mikey and Rennet, and the biggest one, like Donnie, April, and Casey. What happened to that? They just completely had to leave everything to the wayside. Like, Casey got like at least some sort of a like thing of like, okay, at some point he died, and Raph, kept some of his like belongings, and they had that kind of symbolic moment of kind of using it as a bomb and saying his catchphrase. But like, maybe I need to rewatch it a little bit closer, but like, was April in any way referenced in this episode at all? I thought that was like one of the biggest things, of just like, she's probably like the most interesting character in the show, and she's just not mentioned in the last episodes. It's apart from obviously the picture at the end, but like it just felt like this was an idea that they had, and they kind of had to make that idea into the finale without it really meaning all that much. Because look, tonally it was interesting and unique. I wanted to see where it went. It held my interest for the full run, the full 3 episodes. But as I said, the over-reliance on action with villains that didn't really mean all that much, and then just a lot of just plot holes of just like, what was really the significance of like Mira as a character? What was the whole idea of like the path to this oasis? It was just, they created a journey kind of out of nothing. I suppose it was meant to be this kind of subtle reference in that like clearly the tattoo was meant to be some sort of a subway map type thing, and then where they end up, I think, is meant to be like symbolic of like a place from before, that it's meant to be like some place in New York that's near where they were before, but not the same, and they found a home. But it was just like, you need to explain this a lot more than you are. You're leaving a lot up to interpretation here in the last episode. And even then, like, I got like emotion from Raphael with what was happening here, how protective he was of Donnie, just how much he's been through. And then the excitement at meeting Michelangelo again, the shock on their faces when Leo was revealed. That was all to a degree well done, but it felt like they just ran out of time then and didn't have a chance to really do anything. It was disappointing because it felt like at the start they were just really, really vague with the information that this bomb went off and Raph's just like, oh yeah, everyone was killed, it's just me and Donnie left. And then by the end, like, they revealed the full thing of just like, okay, so there was this incident, Leo took the brunt of the blast, the other three were pushed away, but then Donnie lost his body at some point in the blast. It was just like, okay. And Mikey and Raphael got out relatively free. It was just a little bit like no explanation whatsoever given. So it just, it's one of those things where, like, you probably, if you've been watching my Turtles reviews, you could probably tell that probably about midway through season 2, definitely going into season 3, my interest in the show completely waned. Like, it just didn't hold my attention. But I stuck with it because it always did just enough to keep me on board. And it occasionally did some of the things very well, but it always was let down by some of the key things with this series that it always did wrong. So it's one of those ones where, like, yes, I've been very just, like, not invested in this show for a while, but I still wanted it to have a good ending. I still wanted this show, and the amount of, time I put into reviewing this show, the excitement initially, and the things that it did well. I wanted the show to end well, and I really, really, really feel that it didn't. I would have went much more for a happy ending, because I think it fit more tonally with what the show was going for. The big issue that I have with this is that you didn't really end the series with the Turtles as we knew them. Having the finale be a jump forward of like 40 years or whatever it was, really, I think, took away a lot of your investment in the characters, because you have to meet them again at this stage in their lives, and not really getting a moment of like, okay, everything's happy, we're all together now, we've touched on like relationships, who's with who, and just given that sort of like, in the present day, here's happiness. Then maybe you can go down a darker road, but just the fact that we really didn't end on that note, it felt kind of disappointing. Like, I suppose it was meant to be that sort of a case when, like, Leo took out Shredder and that was the end of the major threats, but that didn't do enough in terms of trying to be like an epilogue type thing. And then this arc overall was tonally so different than everything else, it also didn't work as an epilogue. So I feel it feels like the writers had a couple of ideas in place for how to do these episodes and chose the wrong option. In that I'd say they probably had a lot of fun designing all this new stuff with the world in this state and the vehicles and all that sort of stuff, but they went overboard with some of this stuff. Like, there were, as I said before, way too much focus on kind of car-based action that didn't really mean a lot. Like, how many times did Raph end up fighting with that, badger thing, that he had the chainsaw arm like right up against his face? It was at least 4 or 5 times in the episode, and you never once thought that he was actually going to get hurt. How many fights were there in this episode? There was probably like 10. There was probably literally 10 times where a fight broke out. They never left characters together long enough to just have a conversation about anything. And so a lot of the actually really good stuff, like the turtles interacting and not having not met each other for a while, Mira, who had potential, and what they did with this sort of almost like father-daughter dynamic between her and Raphael was nice at times, but they never stopped for long enough to let you breathe and let the relationship kind of develop. So like Mikey ends up kind of in this episode just feeling like a joke initially, does a few cool things in a fight, but that's about it. He just felt very tacked on, and then Leo at the end, like only getting the reveal of like, oh, here's the guy they've been talking about for a while, and it being so obvious that it has to be Leo. That like, here's the three of them. You basically said you don't know what exactly happened to Leo. You just assumed that he couldn't have survived. Then you have this guy up there whose skin is, you know, a slightly different color, but fundamentally it within the range of being a turtle. The three fingers, the head covered. It was very obvious, despite their attempts to make him very different than everyone else, that it had to be Leo. It was the only thing that made sense. Otherwise, like, what sort of reveal was it actually going to be? And then by the end, it was just like, okay, the mutation changed him. I just thought it was so... It in a way was so amazing, but also like amazingly bad, that one of the key big reveals at the end is another misuse, overuse of mutagen as a plot point within the show, and you doing a second mutation on one of the turtles here as a way to like differentiate them as a character. It just didn't work for me on a lot of fronts here. Like, as I said, I'm being critical of the episode, but I think it was overall like fine. But for the series finale to be just fine, that's not good enough. So I'm pretty much gonna bring it to a wrap up here. You know, there's other specifics to the episode. Like, it was cool to see Chompy again and see him so big. Ice Cream Kitty still being alive was nice. There was a few other references along the way that were kind of well done, but I think the core of it just being like, yeah, you kind of missed the mark. I think you really miscalculated on what people actually cared about within the series by not having like a real resolution in the future with April or Casey. Those characters that we actually like cared about, and it just felt like especially the human characters were just left behind. Because I to this day, by the end of the show now, I still don't feel like Mikey, Raph, Donnie at all had any sort of character arc. And even Leo, while I will say he had something and they presented him with some level of importance, never had a character arc where I felt like he actually like really properly changed as a character. So there's a lot of disappointments with this show, and the last episode being so turtle focused and ignoring a lot of the other stuff just felt very weak. And that, like, again, if kind of replacing in a way the human characters with Mira was like cool idea, but I almost felt like there was meant to be some sort of reveal about Mira where like actually, oh, she is Casey and April's daughter, but who's been mutated or something like that. I felt like something like that was meant to like happen. Obviously it couldn't have, because of the time where they set the explosion. It probably couldn't have been that way, but I felt like there was meant to be something more to Mira than just, oh, I happen to have this tattoo of this thing on my arm. Mikey is the only one who can figure it out, and it guides us back to the basically plant life. And it's just like, okay, things are positive now. Yes, they just live here now, and it's fine. It really just felt like, in a way, Nickelodeon gave up on this show, and the writers, to a degree, it felt like they gave up on the show as well. So, you know, I'll be doing one more turtle video. It'll be, obviously there's still more episodes to come, so I'm gonna wait to do that final video on TMNT 2012 until all the episodes are out, and I'll come back and do that one final video covering basically my thoughts on the whole series. How it was, where it failed, what it did well, and, you know, basically, was it a success compared to the other Turtles show and stuff like that. So expect one more TMNT video from me whenever they decide to air the other episodes. But in the comments, I really want to know what your guys' thoughts were on this finale, this three-parter to basically round out the show. Were you happy with it or disappointed? And just overall, what are your feelings on the show overall now that it's in terms of the main plot and the main big things, it's over. So let me know that in the comments. But yeah, that's been the video for today. Thanks for watching, and bye.